Steve Ducey announcing that he is stepping back from his daily and morning routine at Fox and Friends. This news here just breaking. He made the announcement at the end of the Fox and Friends show this morning, and it was a long goodbye, and it's not goodbye forever, but it was a long goodbye to the daily grind of doing Fox and Friends. Steve Ducey, who, of course, is a Kansas native, buddies with Jasper, who does a weekend show for us here on KCMO Talk Radio, was just here at Chicken and Pickle ahead of the Super Bowl a couple of months back. We broadcast from there and had Steve on the show. And here's what he announced just moments ago on Fox and Friends.
It is a great job, but the hours suck. Ainsley and I have talked about this for years, about how hard it is to dash back from wherever we are on the weekends to be live on this couch at 6 a.m. on Monday. But we have to, because the curvy couch is an important part of the show, which brings me to this public service announcement. After decades of getting up at 3:30 and driving into New York City in the dark, today is the last day I will host this show from the couch. I'm not retiring. I'm not leaving the show. I'm still a host, but it's time for a change. Suzanne Scott, the CEO of Fox News Media and a friend of mine for over 30 years, and I have been trying to figure out what a guy who's been getting up at 3:30 for 2 generations should do next. And Suzanne gave me a great option to keep working on this show, just not every day. So from now on, I am working 3 days a week. Essentially, it's the Johnny Carson show deal. Remember, Johnny worked his 3 days in Burbank, and I will be based in Florida, which means you may never see me in a necktie again. Well, Florida is strategic because it's going to make it easier for me to report from Florida and other parts of America that don't get a lot of network airtime. I'll be going from the Carolinas to the Keys, from Middle America to Mar-a-Lago. So call me the coast-to-coast host. So when my kids were growing up, I never had breakfast with them. I was always here. Kathy did everything. But starting tomorrow, I'm going to have breakfast with my grandkids and my children whenever I can. I'm transitioning from it's time to make the donuts to it's time to make the breakfast, Grandpa. Now step on it. By the way, lots of great breakfast ideas in our #1 best-selling.
All right. There you go. All right. I don't need the book pitch there, Steve. Thanks so much. But no, seriously, congratulations to Steve Ducey. Listen, the guy's done tremendously well. That show has been wildly successful, and he's an easy guy to root for. And he's a Kansan, which makes it even better. So congratulations, Steve. And listen, he's at that point. He just had another grandkid, I know, Peter Ducey, who was a year ahead of me at Villanova, just had his second baby. So Kate, my wife, and Peter were 2009 graduates. I was 2010. And they somewhat knew each other, but no one thought that Peter was going to become what he became at Fox, and credit to him. He's really built himself up, and he developed. Nowadays, you don't get a chance to develop at a network level like that, and Peter did. And he's gotten obviously really good as a White House correspondent there at Fox, and now he just had another baby. So Steve's a grandpa. I think he's got 4 to 6, somewhere in there, 4, 5, 6 grandkids now at this point. So good for him. Kick back 3 days a week. Hopefully it means he comes to Kansas City more frequently to do hits, and he said there he's going to be traveling more and being that kind of fourth wheel on the show. I thought when they brought Lawrence Jones onto Fox and Friends, obviously that was part of a succession plan there because they didn't need 4 people. They didn't need Ainsley and Brian Kilmeade and Steve Ducey and Lawrence Jones. But that was obviously part of a succession plan that was in place. So now you'll probably have those 3 in New York. Steve will be kind of this roving part-timer 3 days a week. And you know what? He gets to do his thing from Florida. And I get it. You know, it'll be cool to be around the grandkids for breakfast, I suppose. But I've always said this. I love this schedule. If you can deal with the early mornings, I love the schedule because I can be home when the girls get home from school. I can coach practices. I can coach them on the weekends. I can do all those things that if you're working at nights or in the afternoons, like many in the media are, you miss out on that. Like if you said to me, I got to pick one or the other, I'm picking dinner, I'm picking practices, I'm picking see you when you get home from school over see you in the morning for breakfast. But that's just me. I understand, though. He's made the money. He's had the success. It's time for a change of pace. And good for him. We're happy for him here on KCMO Talk Radio. All right. We will get to our caller of the day, bottom of the hour. We had, of course, a home run interview last hour with Bill O'Reilly. If you missed that, that will be up on the podcast after the show. I did want to get into this because it was something that came up here in the last couple of days, the measles coming to Kansas City, right? There was a big fear piece at the Kansas City Star a couple of days ago. Oh, boy, the measles are coming here. RFK's making cuts. The Kansas City government is suing RFK. What are we going to do? How are we going to handle this? That came up last night on the News Nation Town Hall that aired here on KCMO. RFK got asked about the measles, which, of course, the media is just hyper-focused on. And RFK, I thought, had an outstanding answer to it. First off, he broke it down by data, and that's important. You got to have the numbers, bring them to the table, and here's part of what he said.
We're doing better in managing our measles epidemic in this country than probably any other country in the world that has outbreaks right now. We have about 842 cases, Chris. In Canada, they have about the same number. They have 1/8 of our population. Europe has 10 times that number. Our numbers have plateaued. So you're still seeing added measles cases, but the rate of growth has gone down. Now, there are populations in our country, like the Mennonites in Texas, who are most afflicted, and they have religious objections to the vaccination.
So RFK lays out the numbers. It's part of the numbers I laid out to you yesterday. You know, while the Kansas City Star are freaking out about a measles outbreak coming to Kansas City, when there's not one case of measles in the Kansas City metro, think about that. There's one down in Branson. There's, a bunch down in southwest Kansas. But as RFK said, we've seen a plateau of cases here in the United States. In 2024, there were 127,000 cases of measles in Europe, in a population about double ours, 740 million. Of those 127,000 cases, there were 38 deaths. That's a case fatality rate of 3 in 10,000. Like, I'm not saying that measles is mild for everybody, but you do have to put it into some perspective here. And forget your local media doing that. Certainly national media can't even fathom the idea, John.
Well, forget perspective here. We switch from copy since we don't have a big, scary number, so we go to graphics.
Yeah.
So I saw the contiguous 48 United States up, and then we color code the states where there's a reported case. And that way it looks like so many states in the USA are now being infected.
Yeah. And the other thing,
number, just a nice color chart. Orange, red.
Yes.
Yeah. You know what I mean? That's how we represent it now.
So that also, and they'll do it based on like percentage increase in cases or something.
Yeah, right.
So if you go from 2 to 4 cases, you've doubled. Whoa! You're in the red, right? But it's like, okay, calm down. We've got 4 cases. All right, let's calm down here. But then the bigger picture is something RFK leaned into. Not just the fact that cases of measles are plateauing, thank goodness, and it's not mild, but he's been a promoter of the measles vaccine, and that's important too. He then said, what if the media actually did its job? What if the media actually cared about the things happening to our children that are having a much larger impact on their health and well-being rather than the measles?
We've had 4 measles deaths in this country in 20 years.
4 measles deaths in this country in 20 years. Let's continue.
We have 100,000 autism cases a year. We have 38% of our kids now are diabetic or pre-diabetic. That should be in the headlines. When I was a kid, the average pediatrician saw 1 case of diabetes in a 40 or 50-year career. Today, 1 out of every 3 kids who walks through his office door is diabetic or pre-diabetic. That should be getting the headlines. When I was a kid, 2 million... There were 2 million measles cases a year, and none of them got headlines. And we had 400 deaths. We had deaths about between 1 and 1,200, 1 in 10,000. We have so many kids now who are afflicted by chronic disease, and the media never covers them. They only want to cover measles. And what I've been saying to people is let's pay attention to other illnesses as well. and the illnesses that are really, really damaging our country, that are existential for our country. We now spend almost $1 trillion a year on diabetes and metabolic disorder. By 2035, we're going to be spending $1 million a year on autism. Autism in 1970 was 1 in 10,000 Americans. Today, it's 1 in 31.
That right there, that pitch, and it's not even a pitch, it's just laying out the facts, which is what RFK Jr. just did. That is the kind of stuff that he is doing it in a different way than Trump does it. Trump just kind of beats you over the head, right? But RFK is laying out the numbers for how disingenuous your media is, and that's true here in Kansas City and certainly around the country, and how they pick and choose these little pet things that they think should be headline stories. Oh, the measles coming to Kansas City. Watch out. We've got 1 in 3 kids that are diabetic or pre-diabetic. What is that doing to the cost of our healthcare in this country? What is that doing when it comes to just the long-term well-being of a society? The obesity rates skyrocketing out of control? Not going to talk about that. By the way, big is beautiful. Wink, wink, nod, nod. They are derelict of their duty. They are not doing any kind of journalism. It's just measles is the thing because, well, it might make RFK and Trump look bad. That's it. Be very clear on what's going on here. And he, in a way that he had the numbers to back it up, called them out for exactly that. And I'm so glad. As Bill O'Reilly said, he's not the biggest RFK fan. I wasn't sure how it was going to go. And yeah, I disagree with him on some key issues like abortion and other stuff. But he's bringing these conversations to the forefront that haven't been there in my adult lifetime, and they need to be there. Because we are absolutely failing our children, first off, socially, when it comes to the things that, we just give them and allow them to do and whatever. But also, yes, the government plays a role here as well.